Ethan had lived alone on that wide, open ranch for 8 long years. The land stretched for miles in every direction, full of dry grass, quiet hills, and a sky that felt too big for one man to look at alone. When he first came here, he thought the silence would comfort him. He thought life would feel peaceful. But as the years passed, the silence became heavier than he ever expected. It filled his mornings, his nights, and even his dreams. He learned to speak less, make fewer trips to town, and depend only on his horses and cattle for company. They never talked, but at least they were there. Every day for Ethan was almost the same. He woke before sunrise, fed the animals, repaired broken fences, cooked simple meals, and worked until his body felt tired enough to rest. The loneliness had become part of him, like an old coat he could not take off. People in town called him the quiet rancher, or the man who keeps his own company. They meant no harm. He understood why they said it. After all, they only saw him come in for supplies, nod politely, pay, and leave without starting any conversation. It was easier for him that way. Winter, however, was always the hardest time. The cold winds pushed through every crack of the old ranch house. The nights seemed longer than usual, stretching across the land like a blanket of ice. Ethan kept the fire burning. But even that didn't fully chase away the feeling of emptiness inside the walls. He sometimes sat by the window just to hear the wind move across the grass, reminding himself that the world was still alive, even if his house felt silent. One late evening, dark clouds gathered fast, and a strong storm began to roll over the land. The winds howled like wild animals, pushing against the wooden house. Rain poured down in heavy sheets, hitting the roof so loudly it sounded like stones falling from the sky. Ethan secured his animals in the barn, checking each one to make sure they would not suffer from the cold. The storm did not look like one that would pass quickly. By the time he walked back to the house, night had fully settled. The rain had turned icy, and the wind cut through his coat like a knife. He made a fire, warmed his hands, and prepared for a silent night. But before he could sit down, he heard something unexpected. 3 soft knocks at the door. He froze. No one came to his ranch without reason, especially not during a storm like this. For a moment, he wondered if he imagined it. But then the knocking came again. Louder this time, but weak, like someone struggling to stay standing. Ethan moved quickly to the door and pulled it open. Standing in the freezing rain was a woman, an Apache woman shivering so violently that she could barely hold herself upright. Her clothes were soaked, her hair stuck to her face, and her lips were almost blue from the cold. She looked up at him with desperate eyes, filled with both fear and hope. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely stronger than the wind. "I need help." Ethan didn't ask questions. He stepped forward and guided her inside, wrapping a thick blanket around her shoulders. Her hands were ice cold, and she could hardly speak. He led her to the fire and helped her sit down slowly. She kept thanking him in a trembling voice, even as her teeth chattered from the cold. "My name is Naolin," she managed to say. Ethan nodded gently. "I'm Ethan. Don't worry. You're safe here." She tried to smile, but she was shaking too much to hold it. Ethan hurried to warm some water, prepare tea, and search for dry clothes she could use. She accepted everything with gratitude, her eyes soft but exhausted. Every now and then, she closed her eyes like she was fighting sleep, but he encouraged her to drink and hold on until she warmed up a little more. When her shaking slowed down, she explained what had happened. She had been traveling to find her relatives in another camp. During the journey, the storm struck without warning. She became separated from the small group she was traveling with. Her small horse panicked and ran off into the dark. She had walked for hours, hoping to find shelter, until she saw the faint light from Ethan's house glowing through the storm. "You saved me," she whispered. "If you didn't open the door, I don't know what would have happened." Ethan was not used to compliments. He simply said, "Anyone would have helped." But Naolin shook her head gently. "Not everyone opens their door at night. To a stranger. In a storm." Ethan didn't respond. He only checked the fire, adding more wood to keep it strong. As the storm grew worse outside, Naolin tried to move closer to the flames, but even after hours, she couldn't stop trembling completely. Her skin seemed to have lost all its warmth. Ethan offered another blanket, but she still shivered through both. The wind outside screamed against the windows, and the house itself seemed to shake with the storm. Ethan knew the night would only get colder. He could feel the cold creeping inside the room even though the fire was burning bright. Naolin looked at him with worried eyes. She hesitated before speaking, her voice quiet and unsure. I'm still cold," she said. "Even with the fire." Ethan nodded. "The storm is dropping the temperature fast." She gripped the blanket tightly, her eyes full of fear and honesty. "If I sleep alone tonight, I'm afraid I won't stay warm. My body, it's weak from walking in the cold." He understood what she was trying to say, but she said it very carefully, without anything improper. Naolin lowered her gaze and whispered, "Please, may I stay near you tonight? Only for warmth. I don't want to trouble you, but I cannot survive this cold alone." Her voice was sincere, and her words held no wrong meaning. She was simply a person in danger, asking another human being for safety. Ethan felt something stir in his chest, empathy, worry, and something else he had not felt in years. The feeling of being needed. For 8 long years, no one had asked for his help in this way. No one had trusted him enough to depend on him for survival. He gently nodded. "You can stay. I'll help you stay warm. Don't be afraid." Naolin looked relieved, almost close to tears. She followed him to the large bed, still wrapped in blankets. Ethan kept a respectful distance and ensured she was comfortable. He stayed fully awake for a long time, making sure she was okay, making sure she wasn't still shaking. But something unexpected happened. When she settled close enough to absorb some warmth, her shaking began to calm. Slowly, she relaxed, breathing steadier, her fear melting away. She whispered a soft thank you, full of sincerity and relief. Ethan, who had spent so many nights alone, felt a strange sense of peace. He wasn't used to another heartbeat near him. He wasn't used to someone trusting him this deeply. He lay still, careful, respectful, yet present someone offering safety to a person who needed it. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside that small room, there was a rare warmth. Not just from the body heat that protected Naolin, but from the comfort of knowing neither of them had to face this cold night alone. For the first time in 8 years, Ethan did not fall asleep in silence. And for the first time, in a long time, Naolin felt protected instead of afraid. They both drifted into sleep slowly, wrapped in blankets and safety, unaware that this single stormy night would change both of their lives forever. Naolin woke early the next morning, long before the sun began to rise. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. She only felt the gentle warmth beside her and the soft sound of calm breathing in the quiet room. When she finally opened her eyes, she saw Ethan resting peacefully, still lying straight as if he didn't want to bother her. The storm had ended sometime in the night, but the world outside still looked cold through the thin window. Frost covered the glass like little white feathers. Naolin studied Ethan quietly. His face looked tired but peaceful. She could see the years of loneliness in the lines on his forehead, lines made by silence, hard work, and nights spent alone. Yet there was a softness to him, too, something gentle she had not noticed in many men she knew. He had taken her in without hesitation, offered warmth without expecting anything in return, and stayed awake half the night to make sure she did not fall cold again. When she finally moved, Ethan woke up slowly, his eyes blinking with surprise. He wasn't used to seeing someone so close to him when he opened his eyes. "Are you feeling better?" he asked, his voice quiet and calm. Naolin nodded with a small smile. "Yes, because of you. Thank you." He gave a shy nod, as if he didn't know how to accept gratitude. He stood up gently and told her he would prepare breakfast. As he stepped out of the room, Naolin watched him for a moment. She could tell he wasn't used to someone depending on him, and the way he moved showed a mix of confusion and responsibility. She found it kind. After she dressed in the dry clothes he had given her the night before, she joined him in the kitchen. Ethan was already cooking, moving slowly but carefully. Naolin decided to help, and without asking, she picked up a wooden spoon and stirred the pot. Ethan looked surprised, but didn't stop her. In fact, a small smile softened his face, a smile that looked like it had been hidden for years. They ate together at the small wooden table. The house was quiet, but for the first time in many years, Ethan didn't feel the silence pressing against him. Having someone across from him felt unusual but comforting. After breakfast, Naolin followed him outside to help with chores. The ground was still wet from the storm, and the air was sharp with winter cold. She tightened the blanket around her shoulders, but she did not complain. Instead, she watched Ethan work, learning the rhythm of his life. He showed her how to feed the horses, how to check the fences, how to stack hay in a safer way so the wind wouldn't knock it over. Naolin worked without hesitation or fear of getting dirty. Ethan admired her strength quietly. At one point, she looked around the ranch yard and said, "It's peaceful here." Ethan nodded, "Peaceful and lonely sometimes." She looked at him with understanding. "You have lived here alone a long time." "Too long, maybe," he said softly. They continued working side by side. Naolin noticed how Ethan took care of everything with calm hands, never hurrying, always thinking. She also saw how he rarely spoke unless she asked something. Not because he didn't want to, he simply wasn't used to company anymore. Later, as they returned to the house, Naolin felt comfortable enough to share more of her story. She told him how she had left her people because her life there had become difficult. She didn't speak badly of anyone. But Ethan could hear the pain beneath her quiet words. She had always been the one left out, the one whose voice was dismissed, the one who never felt truly safe among her own. She had walked away, hoping to find a place where she didn't feel like a burden. Ethan listened carefully. He didn't interrupt. He didn't question her choices. He simply let her speak. When she finished, he looked at her kindly. "You're not a burden here," he said. "Not even a little." Naolin felt something warm rise in her chest. No one had said words like that to her in a long time. She looked down, hiding a small smile. As the day passed, Ethan found himself speaking more, telling her small things: how he came to the ranch, how he learned to care for animals, how he lost contact with most people after several years alone. Naolin listened with the same patience he had shown her earlier. She didn't rush him, didn't judge him, didn't tell him he should be different. She just listened, and for Ethan, that alone was something rare. That evening, they shared a simple dinner. Afterward, they sat near the fire. The warmth filled the room, but it was different from the night before. This time, the warmth wasn't only from the flames, but from the presence they offered each other. Naolin sat quietly, her eyes reflecting the firelight. Ethan glanced at her from time to time, surprised at how natural it felt to have her there. Finally, Naolin spoke softly. "Ethan, when the storm cleared today, I thought about leaving again. I thought maybe I should walk until I find another camp or another place." He nodded slowly, trying to hide his disappointment. "You should go where you feel safe." Her eyes softened. "That's what I realized. I already feel safe here." Ethan looked at her carefully, not sure what she meant. Naolin continued, speaking honestly. "Last night, you helped me with nothing but kindness. You gave me warmth, shelter, food, and care. You did not ask for anything. You showed me kindness I haven't felt in years. That means something to me." Ethan didn't know what to say. He wasn't used to hearing such words. Naolin placed her hands on her lap, steadying her voice. "If you allow it, I would like to stay. Not just because I need warmth now, but because you gave it when I needed it most." Ethan's heart felt like it stopped for a moment. He had never expected someone, anyone, to say they wanted to stay with him. He had spent 8 years believing he would grow old, alone. "Are you sure?" he asked, trying to keep his voice calm. Aden with 314. 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 She nodded slowly. "Yes, I am sure. You are a good man, Ethan. Not many people have a heart like yours." He looked at her with a softness he hadn't shown in years. "You're welcome to stay here. For as long as you want." Naolin smiled gently, relief and gratitude in her eyes. She moved a little closer. Not too close, but enough to show she felt safe with him. The fire crackled softly behind them, warming the quiet room. Ethan realized that the house didn't feel empty anymore. The silence didn't feel heavy. The air felt different, full of life, of hope, of possibility. Naolin's presence filled the space that had been quiet for so long. They sat together for a long time, talking softly, sharing stories, and letting the warmth of the fire and each other replace the cold memories of their pasts. For the first time in 8 years, Ethan didn't feel lonely, and Naolin didn't feel forgotten. They had found comfort in each other, without searching for it, without expecting it, simply because kindness had brought them together on a stormy night. When the flames finally dimmed, they sat quietly, knowing that the life ahead of them would be different, better, safer, and filled with a kind of companionship neither had felt in many years. They had no grand promises, no dramatic speeches, only a shared understanding. They were no longer alone.